Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Corner.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop, yay,
Whoop, whoop.
yay, yay. It's me and Jen back in the corner again, in the pod. And
the
this is
pod.
episode 72.
That's right.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about something pretty cool. Something basic, maybe, to some people, but you know, a lot of people know how to do it. So we're going to be talking about demand generation frameworks. Mm-hmm. Or, in other words, funnel structures.
Funnel structure.
Have you used funnel structures before, Jen?
Yes, I have. Have you, Casper?
Yes, plenty of times.
I think we wouldn't be having a podcast if we hadn't.
No, exactly right.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off a bit, and I'll kick it over to you a little bit first here. So generally speaking, do you guys use a funnel structure on Amundo today?
Yep, we definitely do. And I think in most of the companies I've been in, we've had a funnel structure. And the reason being, all marketers know the marketing funnel, awareness, intent, consideration, action, and things like that. They have different names, but overall the concept is the same, right? So we have kind of upper funnel campaigns, but then as we see more intent, as we see people who are shopping, we want to give them more specific content, right? And that's kind of the broad overview of what we're talking about today, of kind of how do you structure that? How do you kind of force some kind of action or decision and make sure that you have the right people?
Yeah. And how do you make it come to life, right? Like I feel it's something I've always thought about funnel structures, always known it was a thing, but it's not until very I want to say the last 2 to 3 years that I've been really good at creating funnel structures, like in platforms. And here I'm specifically talking like LinkedIn and Facebook primarily, right? Those type of platforms. You can do it other places too, but those are like the ones where you can create a full funnel structure. I feel like, and I think that's what I'm at least want to talk a little bit about today.
And I think what's from marketers like us, I think those are the fun things, you know, the retargeting and how do you kind of find the right people. And so that's kind of the fun marketing side of things So let's get into it.
All right, cool. I'll go through how we do it today, and then I'm thinking you can kind of chime in and tell me how stupid I am for doing this.
I would never say that,
you would.
Casper,
It's
to
okay.
your
Cool.
face.
I can take it.
To your face.
All right, cool. So the way we've done it here, first and foremost, I think there's important to notice that there's we operate with typically with these different motions. Like you're gonna have an account-based marketing motion. You can have different types of thought leadership motion and stuff like that.
Yep.
So now we're just talking plain demand generation. And I don't want to be semantic about it, but there's a difference. Either way. So the way we've done it and what I've done the last few years here is essentially to split it up into 5 different layers, and the 4 of them being something that should happen every time. And the first layer is I call it the always on. Some people call it the cold layer. Some people call it the tofu layer, the top of funnel.
We call it the evergreen.
You guys call it the evergreen.
Yep, always on.
What is it in Danish? We have to saying love child has many names. Is that a saying? Can you say that? What do you say when something has very many names and means the same?
I can't even think in English right now.
Okay, right. Fair enough.
I got 2 kids. I don't know. No.
Either way,
This
is what it has many different names, but at the end of the day, it's all the same. This is the top funnel stuff. This is the stuff you do where the goal of the whole layer is just to get on people's radar.
Yes.
You don't need a conversion, and I think you don't need a conversion. Don't get me wrong. We're all happy to get a conversion in the top layer. It does happen time to time. Does frequently happen, but that's not the goal of it. And I think where most people go wrong is that they treat top funnel activities as something that should be converting people right away. The goal of the top funnel level, the always on, is to get on people's radar and make sure they're aware of you, and then get them to the mid funnel. That's actually the goal of it. It sounds simple, but that's actually the goal.
Yeah.
Typically,
to learn more, right? It's to learn more.
It's to learn more. To want to be hey, now you're on the radar. Now they're interested. When you feed them some more product information, other things like that, now they're like, okay, that might actually be interesting to me.
Exactly. And I think that's one important thing to make that distinction of it's not just you trying to be sneaky and trick people. It's finding the people who are willing to go into that sales process.
Yeah.
To find the people who are willing, the people who aren't interested are going to drop off, and that's what you want. You want those to drop off so that you can focus on the people who are likely to become a good prospect, right?
And I think back in the day, what I personally, and here's a mistake I did personally, was that I would treat in the top funnel, I would just be like, here's my value proposition, take it or leave it. Then
Demo,
some people
sign
would
up
take,
today.
yeah, sign up today, go. And don't get me wrong, that would work, it could work. But what I've discovered now, it's a lot more about getting on people's radar and explain more about like what's the core problem your product solves or like a service. What is it you can help with, like fundamentally? Some of the results other companies seeing, that's what you want to get on board with. And I think we the way we do it, which might be a little bit different, is always split it into different campaign types, especially on LinkedIn. So we utilize a lot of video in this stage, and that's for some reason not something I did again 5 years ago, but something I do a lot today. And I think the main differentiator that you need to know for making video work here is that you want to use the in-platform levels of conversion tracking. And what I mean with that is just tracking stuff like whenever somebody watched 50% of your video, okay, that's a pretty good sign. Like, so when somebody watched 50% of your video, that's a lot better than somebody who watched like 1%, 2%, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And you want to use these indicators, because if you don't use these indicators, people are not going to click to your landing page or website based on a video. It might happen, it does happen, but that's not what happens most of the time. People watch a little bit of video and then they're like, okay, now that's a good indicator to me that now you are aware of the company I'm trying to pitch you existence.
And what also, just speaking of video from my video marketing days, that's also a really clever way for marketers to make sure your important message is in the first 50% of that video, right?
Exactly.
Because if you're going to retarget with something with more intent after people have watched 50% of video, make damn sure you get your value prop in that video in the first 50%, ideally first 10%, right?
Exactly. You want to get it across pretty fast, right? Like, so we use a lot of video. We typically use 4 different campaign types. So 2 videos where one focuses on awareness and the other one focuses a little bit more on engagement. And you could argue there's not that much difference in like in the platform level, but there's a little bit of difference where like one is focusing more on getting some sort of action out of people, and the other one's focusing more on just getting on the radar. Then we also utilize typically text ads. Super underutilized format especially on LinkedIn. This is very LinkedIn specific. Text ads are these like ads you see on the side where people don't really click on them, and the whole goal is kind of to not have people click on them.
Yeah, those are the really cheap ones though.
They cost nothing, like peanuts. Like they have to cost something, but it's very cheap. Like, and the goal again is just like you want to make sure people know your name. Like that's actually like it sounds super simple, like classic branding a little bit, right? You want to make sure people know your name.
And if you're doing, the reason for that too, just for the listeners, if you're doing kind of an all-bound where you work very closely with your sales team, and ideally you should be working closely with them, not competing with them. Yeah. If that BDR has a cold outreach and they're like, oh, Anamondo, I've heard of you. Yeah. That call is infinitely easier for that person to have. So it's really important to get your name out there to these right people. Yeah. And
typically what we see, and then the last part, like, so that was we have 2 videos, 1 text, and 1 single image. And the single image is trying to do the same as the videos. It's focusing a little bit more on engagement rather than awareness, but it's the same principles. Main problems you solve or other results company seeing, blah, 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 stuff like that. So that's kind of like the tofu, like the top layer structure. And then you can then we typically go segment by segment, right? So we created unique for each segment, but that's essentially the top. Right. And I think it's really important to say again, like the goal of this is not to convert people. Like we have a bunch of soft conversions we track. I think we talked about that in our episode about these different soft conversions, but those are kind of the things we do. And then we have 4 other layers, essentially 3, but because one of them is an outlier. The outlier is campaigns, and how I phrase that is what I call it potential always on additions.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly. But essentially, it's just there's a lot of people who go like, yeah, we should do a campaign around this. I'm like, yeah, but let's get the structure in place first, then we can add campaigns, right? Yeah. I always advocate for this.
Yeah, and I think this is something that a lot of marketers come up against, especially people maybe who don't have the experience of like these tiny little campaigns, just get those out, pepper the world with these tiny, instead of having a structure and a strategy, you kind of in English we say, put the horse before the cart.
Yes.
Right? You're doing this thing first when actually you need the cart first to kind of figure out what you should be doing. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And we actually had a client here in October when we started, and then in November they were like, yeah, we want to do these campaigns. We're like, nope, we're not doing it. No, we're not doing it. Like until this structure is in place, we're not doing it. Yeah. Like, please, guys, it's been shit for a long time. Let's fix it now, and then we can do campaigns after. Then we can talk about it.
Exactly.
I think it's just the principle because like typically what happens when you do campaigns, and that's why it doesn't work for people, is if there's no structure in place, there's nothing to pick it up. Yeah. Nothing picks it up because campaigns live in the same area where it's like very awareness type level. Like it's very. Like you can fit it in like after an always on layer, but typically it serves in the same layer. It's like getting on the radar with a specific message, right? Yeah. So yeah. But so then we run with, like, we called it the mid layer. You can also call it like the first layer, basic layer of retargeting. So that's and here typically we run 4 different types of ads here, and it's a little bit more specific based on different things. But this is stuff like use cases from other companies. There's like specific features, characteristics of using product, service, like stuff like what can you expect as a customer? Like, hey, if I were to use this service or product or whatever, what will happen?
Yeah,
stuff like that. Then and that's typically single images. We do that one when we focus on these types. And then that's what I call it nurture. The goal is nurture to keep them warm. Then I have used videos also here. 2 types of videos. One of them I focus a lot on building trust, where it's like client testimonials. So it's like important touch points, like from the cold campaigns. So we're retargeting people who've interacted with us somehow in our top funnel.
Yep.
So and that's a very important part just for people to understand that the people we're retargeting here are the people who've interacted with us somehow or another.
Exactly. So they'll already know.
They already know
who you are. You can skip that first step.
You don't have to say, hey, here's my company.
Exactly. You can skip that and you can go straight into the social proof, what we call it. But same idea, building trust. These guys use us. These guys use us. These guys use us.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And this is also, then we also run a bit of document ads here. And those are typically, they can be a lot of different things, but these are where you introduce stuff like case studies, white papers, it could be blogs to some extent, stuff like that. And those can typically, if you want to, be gated. You don't have to. And we actually don't, most of it we don't, but you can definitely run gated stuff here. And I think a lot of the mistakes I see is that people run gated stuff in the top funnel, right?
Too early.
Yeah, way too early.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the basic retargeting mid layer. That's kind of how we structured. I want to say it can be different case by case, but this typically that's how it looks. Then we run something called I call it retargeting, and I call it a 180-day nurture flow. Essentially, the goal here is a little bit different. In the essence that we're trying to keep people warm here. So we use spotlight ads a little bit. Like those are like specific ad types on LinkedIn. Pretty good for engagement and pretty good for, again, they're not super cheap, so you get a lot of traction from them.
Okay.
So we use spotlight ads, we use follower ads, and we use text ads. And all 3 formats are formats that cost very little. And the goal here is just to make sure people still know we're around.
Right.
So these are the ones who haven't reacted, and actually I should have done it in the opposite correction, but whatever. But these are for the people who haven't converted yet. So the people who are still like, hey, they're not super high intensity converters, so they're not the ones who are about to convert or looks like they're about to convert, but they're people who are like, it takes a while timing wise, and you can't keep running like a full funnel structure on them all the time, so you keep them warm.
They're gonna get ad fatigue, so when you call it 180 though, you wait 180 days and then you trigger. This, or
180 days is how long it lasts.
Gotcha.
It kicks in after the other 2 of the retargeting layers have not worked.
Okay, because usually after 180 days they wipe it clean, and you have to start again. Interesting. Okay.
Sometimes we use it's a lot of the same principles, use cases, product features, general about company and stuff. But one of the things you also do here is like we use a little bit strong offers, is what I call it. Like, so, hey, use your budget. Like, hey, here's a value prop, get started today, like, or free access to something, part of a product or something.
Some kind of offer.
It's a little bit stronger. It's not as strong as the high intensity retargeting, the bottom layer. I'll get to that in a second, but that's how we do it usually.
Okay. Yep.
And then there's the last layer, which you could call the bottom layer of the funnel, the BOFU or whatever. Like, and here we call it high intent, 30-day high intent. And the goal here is just to, simply put, to get people to convert.
Yeah.
That's why it's there.
Shit or get off the pot.
Exactly. And here we typically use images. Single images only. Actually, we don't have a lot of campaigns. Like, in each campaign, there's different variations, but there's only 2 campaign tracks to run here. Typically, you don't need a lot more. You can, but you don't need to, because you've already nurtured these people a lot.
Yeah.
And here, what the goal is, just like you have a strong CTA that's try to convert people on the website, and you can. So typically, we do it through 2 different versions. Like, we try to convert people on the website. Sometimes we do it through lead gen forms, if necessary. But most of the time, we prefer to do it on a website.
Yeah.
And then you have a structure where people get nurtured all across the board and like slowly move towards converting.
Yep. Some kind of action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shit works.
Yeah.
Shit works. Like, it really, really works. Like, we have a bunch of clients where we've done it. I've done it like previously when I was in United FinTech, when I was at Templify. That's where I really started doing this, and it works.
And so in my previous careers, we did a very similar setup, kind of wide animation, something to catch the eye.
Yeah.
at the top of the funnel, and then if they engage, retarget them with something a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
And then if they engage with that, then it's the feature specific, the social proof, because the logic would be, okay, if they've engaged with this and they've engaged with this, they know about us and now maybe they're a little interested. And then that is probably where we might put some gated stuff, because we also kind of want an email or something for sales to play with. But it's only when we get a little bit further to that intent.
Exactly.
And then what we would do usually previously was lead gen at the end of the funnel, sign up today, download now, whatever that CTA would be. And then we would retarget anyone who opened the form but did not submit. So a form drop off with some kind of offer.
Exactly.
Very high level, very simple, effective. And one of the things we do at Onamondo now is we take that to the next level where we've separated the kind of purpose between cold inbound and warm inbound. And a cold inbound would be webinar, content download, stuff that's interesting, but you're not shopping. Yeah. And then the warm would be free demo or contact me. We call that a hand raiser. And that we have a different flow for, because these people are shopping. They're like, yes, contact me. I want to learn more. And obviously they're a little bit warmer. They're high intent. Yeah. And so they get a different flow.
Exactly.
So that's kind of how we do it now.
And it's very similar. Like I think, and we talked a little bit about this before, but I think like these frameworks are great. Like there's a reason I made it. Like it's to also explain people why it is like we do what we do. But it's also, I think it's important just to understand it's at the end of the day, it's just a mindset. Yeah. Like it's a mindset that you're like, okay, now we have this mindset of building this structure. So that's that's my whole go-to-market efforts will be around that. Like it will be in this structured way of thinking. Yeah. Because then you also start thinking when you do a campaign or you do a new ad, it's like, okay, how does this fit in? Is this something people should see? They've never heard about us before. Is it something they've seen if they've heard a lot about us? Yep. Like, and those type of thinking is super critical. Like, I think that's the important part.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, one of the things, of course, I love my matrix. I love my structure. I love a good matrix, but that helps us identify content gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If we're like, shit, we have a ton of upper funnel stuff, but we don't actually have anything feature specific. So I like to map out of like,
exactly
tofu,
what we
wofu,
do.
bofu. What kind of content do we have? Actually, we're missing this. Yeah. And then when you kind of get the structure down and you get to the point where it makes sense and you can kind of do it in your sleep, that's when we go vertical specific.
Yes.
So you can do the same kind of thing, but then you have a case study in this same vertical, the features that help this particular vertical, you use imagery from that vertical, so people in that vertical will resonate. You create a dedicated landing page, and you can create vertical specific flows. So you kind of copy paste the general concept, but the content itself changes to be 100%. Specific.
And we do exactly the same. We call it content mapping. It's part of every time we do it every time as well. Because like sometimes we just work with clients where it's like, hey, there's amazing top funnel, but there's nothing bottom. But most of the cases, there's a lot of bottom
but not a lot of top. Exactly.
Not a lot of top.
And that's one of the things. So I've done either vertical specific or I've done geography. It depends on your product. And I remember one time, we were getting these requests from sales of like, I need a porcelain factory in Sweden. I need content for them. And we're like, that's a little too specific.
That's too much.
Let's pull out a little bit.
I need content for this guy. Like,
just this guy.
Wow. That's...
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But, that way we could actually map out and go, well, we have this in Sweden or we have this for that industry. Yeah. Can we, repurpose? It helps you be a little bit more efficient. So, content mapping, content matrix, whatever you want to call it.
No, but it's super important. We do it every time. I think, And it's just that we had a client where I think it's one thing I want to maybe point out before I say this is that this takes a lot of time to roll out.
Yes.
And I think that's my main obstacle that I run into and we run into at SparkForce, but also ran into before. It wasn't as much. I didn't feel like it was the same, to be honest, pressure when I was on the inside. Because like here, I was just building things and like I was explaining people what we were doing, but I was there, like I could sit with people. But as an agency, sometimes like I just have to manage expectations because a full funnel setup like this can take up to 6 months to build.
Right.
Sometimes. Most of the times we can do a lot faster. Like we have cases where we do 3 months, but 3 months, like minimum, bare fucking minimum is 3 months.
Yeah.
And
they want results.
Just can't
yesterday.
do it faster. Like it's like there's a bunch of things you can do faster, and you can make optimizations, and you can do. It's not because the whole structure, like you can launch part of the structure faster, but it takes time. Yeah, and I think that's just my main takeaway. Like these things take time. Do proper marketing. Well, it takes time.
Yeah, and that's that comes down also to stakeholder management. Yeah, because I've definitely been in the position where I'm doing this and I'm building it out, and they're like, "We need leads now. You have a monthly target, so." Make that gated. Yeah. Or no, forget the upper funnel stuff. Just go straight in with the offer. And it's because these other external people who don't really external people, but non-marketing people who are like, whether it's sales, whether it's your CEO, whether it's your CRO, are like, we need these leads in. and then that pressure can totally fuck the whole thing up.
Exactly.
You know, it's again putting the horse before the cart, and it's understanding that this takes time and it'll pay off, but you have to wait. Yeah,
exactly. Let's take a scary example. So let's say you're listening to this episode here. We're recording this late February. So let's say you're listening to this some February, March here, and that let's say you work for a company where you let's take one of our clients without mentioning, they have a very niche product, actually close to Armando in service, but it's quite
Scandalo.
And they have a very much an ABM motion. So that means their lifetime value of their product super high, but it takes a long time to close, 9 months, 6 to 9 months, something like that. Okay, if it takes 6 to 9 months to close, that means that everything technically they get in the pipeline should come in around between March and summer. If it doesn't come in between March and summer, there's no way it can close. So everything that comes in September is, realistically speaking, not closing this year.
Yeah.
That means they have 3 months now to get their structure in place, and they haven't started building their structure yet. So, and we're going to help them, right? But the point is, we need 3 months to build the structure, and the structure won't work until at least 3 months from now. They won't. That's the early indications, and typically when it's ABM, it takes a bit longer, right? So technically, to be honest, it's almost already too late.
Yeah,
it's almost already.
It's always too late.
It's always too late. But
if you want it now,
if you want it now, if you want ABM results within 2024. It's almost too late, guys.
It's too late now.
I remember the first time I started thinking that way, that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because you take your pipeline and then you take your setup of your structure if you haven't had anything in place. Wow.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
It's a similar thing with SEO, right?
Yes.
You know, when I've been in companies where we want direct traffic. I'm like, okay, well, what's your SEO policy? We don't have one. Well, guess what?
See you in 2 years.
It's going to take me 3 to 4 months to get all the keywords and to get all the content, and then it's going to take a while for the algorithm to kick in, and you'll see that spike hopefully in 6 months.
Yeah,
if we're lucky, 6 months.
At 6 months, I think it's pushing it.
Yeah,
to be
6
honest,
months is
right?
That's what I usually tell a CEO.
Yeah, exactly.
To get them off my case. I'm like 6 months, 9 months.
I usually,
10 months.
and I'm not a guru in SEO, I gotta admit, but I usually say when people talk SEO, I'm like, if you're really good, a year.
Yeah.
If you're amazing,
10
faster.
months?
Yeah.
9 months?
But if you're just really good, a year.
Good marketing takes time. And I think, and this is not what this episode is about, but that's also where, for me, the gated conversation comes in, because you have a sales team you have to feed.
Yeah.
And that's where you get pressure to give me some emails, give me some leads, well, how do I get leads? I need an email address. How do I get an email address? I gate something. So it's how do maybe we do a webinar, we do something like that where it's a bit more immediate return, where people feel more comfortable giving their email because they need the link but it's always a balance of making sure your sales team are fed, something to play with while you have this thing running in the background.
And I think it's important, and it's a great point. I think it's a great point, because we also have some big, a big American client in this case, and they're super cool, but they're also we want to switch a lot of the stuff they're doing over to the structure, this funnel structure, but it takes time to build. That means that we can't just do a hard switch,
right.
And then we have a bunch of sales team across the world be like, hey guys, what's going on?
Yeah,
right? I need something.
Give me something. Yeah,
and I totally get that. So sometimes, a lot of the time, it's a slow transition, but you got to start the transition.
Yeah.
You got to start it.
You got to start somewhere.
And a lot of it is the content development, developing the content for the framework. It's actually not setting up the ads.
Setting up ads does not take that long.
That's not the part that takes long. The part that takes a long time is mapping the content, as we talked about, and then fucking developing it.
And then you have to, if you use HubSpot, you need your forms, you need your retargeting, you need to set up dynamic lists. Yeah. All of these things take a long time. Your if-thens and your nurture flows, and it's not just throwing some ads out there.
And then let's to give it a little bit what do you call it? Tail on the fix on the tail. I don't fucking know. My
cow on the ice.
Are off. Yeah, tail on the ice. Yeah.
Cow on the ice.
Okay, cool.
Nope, sorry.
But
Danish is wild.
Call it a wrinkle. Call it a wrinkle. Oh, whatever. Okay. Is that, let's say we just went through, if you have one segment. We have a client where we were doing it on 3 segments. So we actually counted how many ads we did for the top funnel there. I think we did 120 ads. Yeah. 20 ads in a span of a little bit more than a month.
Because you should have 8 or 9 ads per
exactly.
per initiative.
Per initiative. There's 4 times
layers.
3, and then you can times that out, right? And some of them, the text ads, you need 15 different variations, right?
And that's where you have to have a
time consuming, but
very nice designer. I mean, it's not. I don't know. Sometimes with designers, are like, you want 120 ads, and I'm like, I want 90 of this.
Boom, boom,
yeah,
boom.
yeah. I want this, this, and this. Put this picture here. Put this picture here. Put this picture here. You know,
Exactly.
hopefully
And then
it's
suddenly
not
you're like, whoa.
bespoke, but it gets wild. Yeah.
And I remember the manager, like the one we were working with, he was like, "Wow, that was a lot." And he was like, he was not used to that, not expecting.
Yeah.
He was like, "Did you guys all do that?" "Yeah, we did that together with your team in like a month." It was
Yeah.
super impressive, but it's a lot of work. Okay, I get it now. I get it.
And
Awesome.
remember, you also have to optimize them.
Yeah,
So you have
exactly.
to
The
look at
first is
those
launching and then
yeah.
optimizing.
Which
right?
ad worked best? Well, let
Yeah.
me go through all 120.
Yeah, exactly.
See which. Yeah, so
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
But it
And
pays
it's-
off. I just want to
pays
point it
off.
out. It pays off. Like so, it's worth it. But you need to have some structure in how
Yeah.
you do marketing. Essentially.
So the moral of the story is, if you have a CEO or a sales director or anyone who's on your ass to get something now, let them listen to this episode.
Yes,
And tell them back
get them
off.
on this episode.
Jen and Casper say, back off.
We'll take a call with them personally.
Casper will take a call with them personally.
But no, but like I think it's managing expectations,
Yeah,
right? Because
100%.
this is the right way. There's no doubt in my mind that this is the way to do marketing these days on platforms. Like
Yeah.
I think you do the same. Like you do the same without even. Like we haven't even talked about this part, right? Like you've always done this. I
Yeah.
feel like, right? So this is the way to do things. It's just important that you manage expectations internally, right? So they're ready. Okay, this is gonna take time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And see you at the next episode.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.